if you want to go in this business, you'll meet geniuses, you'll meet, brilliant people, you'll meet wonderful people. You'll be in situations that become historic. There's nothing quite like being, I was backstage at this show, or I was at the final show of this series or something like that. So there's moments in life that very few people get to say, I was part of this. It's a great business in that sense, and it's wonderful. On the flip side, it's a business built on egos, paranoia. Many, many people are out there to undercut you and, whisper in artists' ears that, no matter how good a job you may be doing, whatever, a whisper in the ear is all it takes. And they're off. They'll change. They'll knock you out. So it can be a really cruel and unfair business and heartbreaking business. But if you know that going in, you have to take the good with the bad. And if you're honest and forthright and do your job well, you'll have a nice, long career.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, what an honor. Please welcome my guest today. Known this man since I was sperm.
It's true.
Danny Robinson.
Nice to be here. Always nice.
You,
always
brother.
Great to see you.
Oh, let's not go crazy. I don't think there's anybody who's ever said that to me that was great to see me. I've always had this
semi-fond then, yeah.
I've always had this thing, this like pig pen, this thing hanging around me because I always did things a little bit differently.
Nothing wrong with that. That's great minds do things differently, so that's not a big problem.
Let us pray.
Yeah, exactly.
I have so many things to ask you because the comedy business and you go together like...
We've both been in it a long time, yeah.
It's incredible. But you've been in it since you were probably like an infant.
Yeah, well, I was in the industry because of my folks. I was raised on the road, so I left Virginia when I was 10 weeks old and moved back to New York where we lived. My mom.
Now, were you an only child?
Only child. It took my mom. They had trouble conceiving, so they finally got me when my mom was like 28, I want to say, or something like that. Because they were on the road. They were a song and dance team, so they were on the road all the time.
They were very famous song and dance team.
They did very, very well. They were very well known.
They did The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson.
They did every variety show in its day in the 50s, 60s. They did all of those things. The only one they never did was Ed Sullivan, interestingly enough. But literally every other show, and did the Tonight Show a bunch of times. Johnny, they were on about the last 15 years of their career, they were on the road largely with Johnny. So they were Johnny's opening act, Johnny, Doc, a female singer, which was usually Phyllis McGuire, and then Johnny.
Isn't that amazing? Like you think about today, and anybody listening, the comedians on the road today, and you see who opens up for them. A lot of times you don't even understand like why the person is opening up for them, who's opening up for them. But until you realize that person makes them feel the safest, is the best hang, and that's who they want to be with. They might not be the best opening act for them, but they're the best to make them feel good.
There's sort of two I've always sort of found there's sort of two categories of that, in that there's the artist that brings friends that you want to be comfortable on the road. Obviously, that's a big part of it. And the smart ones bring friends who are really good. I have known guys through the years that are phenomenal performers, but they never wanted someone really good to open for them, which is the wrong thing to think in my book. One of the reasons my folks were an opening act through most of their life, and one of the reasons they had the career they had and the people they worked with, all these great artists they worked with, is they opened a show and they killed, and the crowd would be going crazy, having a great time. So when the headliner comes out, they're already happy. They're having a good time. And that's what you want. You don't want the crowd going, oh, I just sit through 15 minutes of this fucking guy. And now you come out and you've got to get them back up. The whole purpose of a good opening act is to get the crowd ready so that you walk out. I mean, I always tell stories about all the years when Steve Martin was doing his concerts. Stevie Goodman, who was a client of ours and client of mine, good friend, was a brilliant folk singer and writer and guitarist and great personality. most famously known for writing City of New Orleans. Wrote that. But Steve and Steve were on the road together for years. Steve Goodman would open, Steve Martin would do the closing. And the reason it worked so well, they got along, they were friends. But also, Stevie Goodman, I mean, set that crowd up, man. When Steve walked on the stage, they were all excited to see him, obviously. He was a big star, but they were already having a party. They were just having the greatest time. So Steve would walk on, and he would just surf onto that role, and it was the best. And the shows were amazing.
Tell our audience what your parents' act was like back then. Like how much comedy, how much dance, how much singing.
It was a song and dance team.
But how much comedy within the song? And
not
dance?
much. I mean, my dad would do funny stories and jokes between numbers, but it was mainly song and dance. Like think Fred and Ginger.
Yeah,
that's what it was. They would, and their act was basically like a cavalcade of popular dance. And they would go back to, the soft shoe and then the Charleston and the jitterbug and, all those kinds of things. And they would always close their show with whatever the popular dances of the day were, the frug, the twist, the Hully Gully, whatever, which they used to learn from me. They would always come to me and go, what's the new dances out there? And I would teach it to them, and then they'd put it in their closing number. Now,
how did you become part of the act when you were an infant? Could you explain that to me?
Well, I mean, I didn't do it until I could walk, of course, but but I was always on the road with them. I literally, till I was 6, I was on the road with my folks. So I was, I was just there. I was always there. So as soon as I kind of got big enough to, I was always dancing, obviously, with my mom and dad. My dad and I we'd be like, if we were in a hotel and waiting for the elevator, and the acoustics were good, and there was like a tile floor, we'd do time steps, and he'd teach me time steps and shit like that. So when
you go to a wedding, people are shocked.
Yeah, it's true. Yes, yeah, he knows what he's doing. But yeah, so I guess the first time I probably they would have me come out for like the last number with them when I'm on the road with them. So that was always fun. And then my first paying job, I was 12. And my folks were doing, they used to have industrial shows back in the day where they would literally write basically a 2-hour Broadway show introducing the new products for either Lincoln Mercury or Motorola or whatever the big company was at these conventions. And they'd bring all the, salesmen and stuff down, and they would do the show in the afternoon, showing all the new products, and they'd all perform. And then the people in the cast that also did nightclub acts, like my mom and dad. Then at night, it was mostly men in those days, and they'd bring their wives, and they'd have a dinner and a show, and my mom and dad would perform in the show. So when I was 12, the people that produced those shows were good family friends, and they knew me well. So they said, we want you to come and do a number with your mom in the afternoon show. I did a thing with my mom. We danced and did the hula hoop. And then in the nighttime show, my folks did their act, and I would come out and do the last 2 numbers with them. And I got $100 for the summer. I needed a good agent back in the but for me, I was 12 years old. I'm the happiest boy in the whole USA, so it was fun.
Well, $100 back then.
That's true. $100 back there was actually real money. Yeah, that was fun. But I always did that all through till I got into my teens, basically.
And how did you make the transition to going on the other side?
Well, I got to 15, and
not that kind of transition.
It was nice. And the knife came out. No, at 15, we lived in Manhattan. So
where do you live in Manhattan? In the city?
Right right in 58th and between 5th and 6th. Yeah,
of course. That's where Isn't that where the Carnegie Hall is?
Yeah, that's all right there. I mean, I was a block from Central Park. That was my backyard. That's where I would go to play every day. I spent...
No abductions back then.
Never.
Send you out there.
Chased a couple times, but that was about it.
They just send you out there. It's like you're 4 years old.
They really would. I would go out there. A couple of kids I knew in the neighborhood, we'd all go there. My mom would take me almost every day to the carousel. I have a picture. I have a photo of the carousel in my house because it's like I was there so often as a kid for years. And but that was my backyard, literally.
Incredible.
Yeah,
And so tell us about the transition from being a performer, because you were getting paid, and the natural.
Well, just that one time.
But I mean,
My folks didn't pay me.
you were good at what you did, and you knew the formula. And chances are, those gigs where your parents headlined the B rooms or whatever when they weren't with a celebrity, you could easily come in. You know how Buddy Hackett used to have his son open up for him. Like, how come you didn't go in that direction?
I always enjoyed performing. I don't have stage fright. And I always had a good time. And it's nice. People would say to me, "Oh, you're very good. You should do it more." But I was that guy that if I was in a show or if I was with something, like even when I got into college and stuff, as a theater major, if I was in a show with some of the people, some of my friends and stuff, and you come off stage and the performers were like, "Oh God, tomorrow night I want to try this and I want to do that." I was the guy who would come off and go, "Yeah, that was fun. You were great, but if you try this, it'll be even better." I was always thinking that way. I never cared. I literally never cared if I ever got back up on a stage. I liked doing it. And if someone said, "Can you go on right now?" I wouldn't go, "Oh, I'm scared." No, I would go, "Fine, I'll go." But to really be a performer, and you know this, to really be a performer, the minute you get off stage, you have to be thinking about when your next time up. How am I going to be better? You have to have that drive. Otherwise, you're going to suck. And I never had that drive. I enjoyed it, but I really didn't care if I ever got back up on stage. So at 15, I'd been on the road with my folks since birth and having a great time. And actually interesting you say that, because I didn't know it at the time, but being on the road with them and playing all the nightclubs and playing colleges and playing conventions and all that chat really helped prepare me when I started doing my actual career. So at 15, I was like, it's great being on the road with my folks. It's fun. I'm playing all over the country. But, you're starting to get interested in girls and you're starting to get interested in having a social life. And it's hard to do that when you're sitting in a room with your mom and dad in Chicago. So I want to get a summer job. And, I got an apartment right in the middle of Manhattan. What better gig, right? So they were actually in California. We were in New York. They were in California, and they were having dinner with some of our old family friends who were their agents. Alan Bregman. Remember Alan who used to book? Yeah. Alan and Julie are very close friends of my whole life. And Alan, they were talking, and they said, "Danny's looking for a summer job and stuff." And Alan said, "Would he want to work in the mailroom?" So my folks called me from the dinner, actually, and they were just like, "We're here with Alan, and, would you be interested in, what would you think of being in a mailroom?" And I went, I said, "What does it pay?" And they said, "Yeah." So they set me up with Arthur Treef, who was a legendary, wasn't a office man before. There was no such thing as HR in those days, but he was the guy who hired and fired the mailroom and the secretaries and all that. So I went and had a meeting with him and hired me, and I started at 15 in the mailroom at Ashley Famous.
Was Ashley Famous the agency that represented your parents?
No.
What agency represented your parents?
They were with MCA.
Okay.
And then when
that was Lou Wasserman, right? He ran that
exactly.
company.
And then when MCA got busted by the government, APA was formed out of that. And their agents.
There were 5 people from that company that formed it, or was it?
Well, there was the one name was Dave Baumgarten was the guy who founded it, and there were like 4 other agents that went with him to form Roger Vorse and
was it Marty Klein?
No, Marty wasn't there yet. No, he was not an original. Marty and John were not originals. It was Roger, the guy who headed up the Chicago office, and the guy who headed up the Miami office. And Harvey Litwin, who was our CFO and all like that. So they'd all been at MCA together. And when the company got busted, that was, in fact, when that company got busted, APA until a year ago.
Tell the audience what they got busted for.
But they were the only company that formed that stayed. Every other company that formed when they got busted ended up being either merging or being bought by William Morris or someone like that, GAC. APA stayed independent until a year ago, when they changed the name. But so I ended up going to work there, and it was It was fun. And I was fortunate in that the people that I, like right outside the door of the mailroom was the music department. And I'm a big music nut. And so I started in the rock and roll department years ago. And so I got friendly with all of them out there. And you got to realize, I was 15. A lot of the agents were 23, so they weren't that far from my age. And of course, we were all listening to music together, and I'd go to the gigs with them at night, and and that was great. I was in heaven. A 15-year-old going to concerts for free, getting free albums. Didn't get any better.
How long before you became an agent?
Well, I went and worked at the Summers from junior of high school right through finishing college.
And just let our audience know the kind of artist that Ashley Famous was representing when you were 15.
God, it was people like Jefferson Airplane and, God, I'm blanking it, The Doors.
Ashley Famous.
Yeah. And then they got busted, then they were all at APA.
Got it.
And then...
so you moved from there seamlessly to APA.
No, I was at Ashley. Then the first year I was there, the summer I was there, is when Ted Ashley left the company to become head of Warner Brothers in California. And Marvin Josephson, who had a very successful small agency that dealt with mainly news kind of people, Mike Wallace and those kind of people. And Captain Kangaroo was one of his big clients, and he packaged that show and all that. He bought the agency and it became IFA. So that's that summer we transitioned from Ashley Famous to IFA. And then I kept coming back every summer to IFA through college. And then when I finished college, they asked me to have a permanent job. So I went to work in the New York office in the mailroom. And then about a year into that, I guess, or so, is when the merger of CMA and IFA became ICM. And so I went through another round of changing the the papers and the letterheads and all that crap.
I've never known anyone who spent more time in the mailroom than you.
Well, I couldn't get out of it because it was just a summer job. It was a summer job, so it was only 2 months a year I'd be in there. When I started permanently, I moved out of the mailroom and moved on a desk of Chuck Ramsey. Was a wonderful guy. He was a music agent.
Mm-hmm.
And so
who were his clients that you were assisting with?
We worked with Earl Scruggs Review and Phoebe Snow. But those were two I worked really closely with. And then the merger came down, and a lot of my friends got transferred to California. At that point, my mom and dad had moved out to California, and a lot of my friends were out here. And I'd come out here a lot and enjoyed it.
But your dad became an agent too, didn't he?
Became no manager. He managed Doc Severance.
A manager.
Yeah, he managed Doc Severance. So they had already moved out. They moved to California when The Tonight Show did in '72.
And for those of you who are too young to remember, Doc Severinsen was the band leader for
most of the
Johnny
years
Carson
of The Tonight Show.
For most of the years on The Tonight Show, and he had like this. It appeared like he was straight, but he always wore jackets and outfits every day that were like Liberace.
That became a big thing. That started with some fans sent him in some wild ties, and he wore them on the show. And Johnny, of course, it was great fodder for Johnny. And it sort of became like a signature thing. And so my dad and I would go out and they would find stuff for Doc so that Johnny could have fun
Did
with
your
it.
dad represent Doc before he got the show? Or after?
No, they met when they were on the road with Johnny. It was my folks, Doc would lead the band and do a couple numbers. And then usually Phyllis McGuire, although there were other, Leslie Gore did some and a few others.
So Doc was already on The Tonight Show.
Yeah, well, Doc started when The Tonight Show started and when Skitch Henderson was the band leader. Doc was in the band. He was an NBC studio musician, very respected. And he was to Skitch Henderson kind of what Tommy Newsom became to Doc. And then there was a great story, but Skitch got fired after about a couple years. I forget how many years. And everybody assumed Doc would step into that role. And NBC decided to put in Milton DeLugg, who was a very respected and wonderful band leader and arranger and all that stuff, but didn't have a sparkling personality. And so I don't know how long he was on the show, maybe a year or something like that. But all that time when Johnny was touring, he still took Doc on the road to lead the band. And Doc left the Tonight Show because he was pissed. He left the Tonight Show band, stayed an NBC musician, but just never worked on the Tonight Show.
It's interesting that Johnny, with all the power he had,
well, he didn't have that
his
much
band.
power at that point. I mean, he was a big star, but he wasn't what he became. But after like a year and a half, I forget how long it was, he finally went to NBC and he went, guys, we're a variety comedy show here. I need someone I can have laughs with. I can't have laughs with Milton. He's a brilliant musician. He's a lovely man, not a comedian. Doc is funny, as well as being a great musician. So they hired Doc and then my dad became his manager, like in 68 or 69.
Here's something I want you to share with the audience that a lot of people don't know. So when you're a manager or an agent and you sign a client who already has a job, they're already on the air,
right?
They're already making a salary for that year, and they presumably have a contract that has 5% bumps for
whatever,
other years. Yeah. How does a manager or an agent get paid for representing the artist that might have a 5-year contract or 7-year contract?
There's a few ways that can happen. For the most part, they don't get paid for that contract. But some artists, it depends if you've got a 3-year contract, let's say, and a year into it, you want someone to be your manager. And then you make a deal with them. You go, look, I'll give you, 3% until the contract's up. Then when you negotiate the extension, then you can get your full 15 or 10, whatever. Now, that's one way.
Stay with me here. Yeah. Don't lose me. So let's say your father.
Yeah.
Let's say he doesn't get paid for the next 2 or 3 years or whatever. He renegotiates the extension. Right. So let's say Doc, just for the sake of argument, we're just using a figure that means nothing, is making $100 a year.
Right.
Okay. And your father is part of the renegotiation, and then Doc makes $120 a year.
Right.
Does your father commission only the 20? That he got extra?
That's usually what happens with agents.
What
that happens if agents renegotiate from another agency. That's what happens. You get the extended. Managers many times are different because Doc didn't have a manager before that, so he wasn't paying anybody.
Got it.
So and also the contracts back then, because it was a 52-week-a-year show, so it was a different setup than it would be for a 13-episode, 22-episode.
I think it's fascinating to me because an artist back then, like Doc, he has his contract. He's not paying any commission to anybody.
Right. He was a studio musician.
Basically. And he hires your dad, and he makes the decision to carve out a percentage of his salary to your dad when
he technically didn't have to. Absolutely.
He didn't have
to. But you know this because you're an excellent manager. They bring in people to manage.
I'll keep telling myself I'll write that in the mirror.
I'll write that exactly. I'll get you a plaque. But they get a manager because they want to expand the career, which is what my dad did with Doc. He helped him with that wardrobe. So that gave him an image. He was always known as a great trumpet player, but now he's a funny guy and a personality.
And that's where I wanted you to go.
And then the money. And then they would book him in. My dad got him an agent, booked him in personal appearances. So he made money going on the road and doing commercials and helped him with his record deal and all that stuff.
And that's where I want you to go. Because a lot of times what happens is artists, they're just thinking about that 10%. Oh my God, I got to add that. I got to do that. Why should I give this or why should I give that? A lot of people let agents and managers go because they think if they let them go with dates on the books that they're going to be able to not pay them.
Yeah, exactly.
And then they try to not pay them.
Oh yeah, happens all the time.
And because they're always looking at the money, the short-sighted thing of the money, as opposed to the how much the manager or agent has earned their 10%. Because it's, when you really think about it, all the things that happen, your dad could have gotten Doc 3 corporate gigs, and that could have paid for
more
his
than
commission for 3 years.
Exactly.
And so people don't always look at that, though, which is weird. So
the smart ones get that. Not everyone's that smart, but
Well, sometimes they're smart, and sometimes the business has a way of twisting artists into balloon animals. And,
absolutely.
And then they're just. And
look,
then,
there's the. I mean, this. We're in a very interesting industry. It's wonderful. I always tell people, I teach classes and stuff all the time, which I love, and I say, if you want to go in this business for a job, it's a phenomenal business. You will meet people you'll never get to meet. You'll meet geniuses. You'll meet, brilliant people. You'll meet wonderful people. You'll be in situations that become historic. So, and you can be, I said, that only happens in a couple of industries, sports and entertainment. That's, I mean, in other industries, there's, like in the space industry, if you're part of the Apollo program or something, but there's nothing quite like being, I was backstage at this show, or I was at the final show of this series or something like that. So there's moments in life that very few people get to say, I was part of this. So it's in that sense, it's a phenomenal job. And you get to meet, as you well know, you get to meet brilliant people. So it's a great business in that sense, and it's wonderful. On the flip side, it's a business built on egos, paranoia. Not everyone, but many, many people are out there to undercut you and, whisper in artists' ears that, no matter how good a job you may be doing, whatever, artists have fragile egos. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. And most of them are smart and will look at the landscape and balance and judge. Others, a whisper in the ear is all it takes, and they're off. They'll change. They'll knock you out. So it can be a really cruel and unfair business and heartbreaking business. But if you know that going in, you have to take the good with the bad. And if you're honest and forthright and do your job well and treat people like they should and treat buyers like they should and all like that, you'll have a nice long career. Will you get heartaches? Absolutely. Will you get fired by people out of the blue? Absolutely. And it hurts and it's horrible. But you know what? As a friend of mine told me many, many years ago, he said, when someone leaves you, it's horrible as it is. You look around, you go, they come, they go, who called? It's a little cold, but it helps you get through that, because there's always going to be someone else. There's always going to, if you're good at what you do, there'll be another chapter.
Yeah, when I started, my thought always was, it's the same thought I think I have in my personal life and relationships there, as well as businesses, that I always tried to act like I was auditioning for the next day.
Good way to put it.
And if I am not worthy that day and I get my ass handed to me, then that's the way it is. And even if I've done an extraordinary job, which I've known you for a long time. I've always been the guy who takes the piss out of myself. I'm always self-deprecating. Yeah. I'm always talking about how the business has, crushed me like a bug. And then there's something else that's just amazing high. And you're like, holy shit, now I know why that happened. And you're like, oh, that high comes crashing down. And then there's another one.
It's a roller coaster. You got to,
And I always say to anybody who will listen, and very few people do, that you got to love the business. Just don't fall in love with the business.
It's a good quote. It's true. Absolutely true.
And so for me, I look back and I think if I'm open and there's the truth serum in my veins, it's like whenever you're representing people, you want to be a good person. You want to be the best. But like everything else, if you have one client, then you have one of one, and that's all your thing is. If you have 10 clients, there's going to be one client that is experiencing the best results and one that's experiencing the 10th best. And it's easy for that person to look and say, well, how come I'm not doing that, no matter what work you're doing? But for all the things that you said, I love what you said, because the entertainment business, it just puts you in these incredible situations. And I look at my life and my career, and I just, like, sometimes I have to, like, pinch myself to think that a kid from Longmeadow, Massachusetts, who worked with disabled kids and adults, is on the floor at Boston Garden for 2 shows, or gets to start social media with a guy who presses a button and changes the game, or hanging out with Jeff Ross and bringing the roast to Comedy Central, or being able to hang with Dave Chappelle and Richard Pryor and see what they're doing together, or just seeing the gestation, the beginnings of somebody like Bill Burr or Nick Swartzen, or going to Harlem and watching Tracy Morgan, and then, having him tell me he lives in the projects with 4 kids and his girlfriend, and then, what seems like seconds later, he's on Saturday Night Live. It's like, it's unbelievable what can happen. And I knew when I got into this crazy up business that I knew that, there's always going to be heartbreak. Because when I started, not to get too depressing, and some people who know me
Somebody
well,
have a knife? No.
But long ago, as some people know, I was married before I really was in this business. And my wife passed away after 8 months of being together. And I thought to myself then, as I lied in the fetal position, I said, there is nothing in the entertainment business that could ever hurt me like that.
Interesting,
hurt me. So nothing, I could get my ass handed to me over and over again.
You had homemade armor. Yeah.
I got the homemade armor, and I know if I've done great work, I would presume, let's say, just take anybody I worked with. Let's just take Chappelle for 8 or 9 years. I would presume if Dave is sitting here without me in a soundproof booth, I would hope he's going to say, that guy can spit blood from me.
Yeah.
I've had another manager for maybe 9 months in my whole career. And so I know my place. Yeah. I know what I've worked on, what I've done, but you still have those situations where somebody takes a meeting with you, and it's it's over. Oh, well, what happened? It's like, is there anything that, can we rectify? Can we do anything? No. And it's like, well, what is it?
More often than time, when their mind's made up, even if it's not logical, their mind's made up, and they 90% of the time, and now and again they mean to be mean, but most part they're not trying to be mean. It's survival of the fittest. It's their career. I always say to people, I say, look, I get up in the morning, I go in, look in the mirror, do the best I can, and I know I can go in and I'm taking care of clients, and I want the best for all of them. But at some point, someone's going to say, it's not you, it's just the company you're with or whatever. I've got to try something new and something like that. And like you said, it's heartbreaking, but you have to go, okay, next.
Nobody ever gets mad when, the dry cleaner doesn't hold a grudge when you go to another dry cleaner.
True. I moved 2 blocks away. It's too far to come. Yeah.
The restaurant, your favorite restaurant, they don't come after you when you start going to the new restaurant in town.
Yeah,
it's like
true.
So it's like you have to look. If anybody were to tell me, and I just want to say, and I don't know if you feel the same way. If anybody were to tell me that, okay, Barry, before you talked Dane Cook, Bill Burr, Dave Chappelle, Louis C.K., Bert Kreischer, you're going to represent these people an average of about 10 years. You can do that, but it's going to end, or you can choose not to do it. Right. I would do it every time. Every time. Because
well, if you're drawn to this business, then exactly. The other thing I always say is, you know, like you said, you have to be drawn to it. You have to love it, which is a big part of it, because it's too crazy and too hard if you don't. On the flip side, you can't love it too much, because it will kill you. I mean, I'm sure you've seen it. I've had friends through the years that literally got killed by the business. I mean,
no, I've had people kill themselves.
Yeah,
I've had people leave the business. And I think that I've always been the kind of person, and maybe it's bad. See, you, permission to speak freely?
Yeah, exactly.
So you were an agent at APA for 3 decades?
4.
4 decades. So you concentrated on doing one thing, and one thing to the best of your ability. And for me, from when I first started, I think after I experienced that tragedy, I said, I don't want to just do one thing, and this could hurt me, or the people might say, oh, well, you're doing a lot of things. You're producing TV shows, you're doing movies, you're managing me. You started this podcast 12 years ago. Oh, you got Ted Sarandos on? Well, how come you don't talk to Ted about me?
Yeah.
Or you do consulting and you're working with Cirque du Soleil to bring comedy to them, and maybe a comedian you're managing is saying, how come you're working for Cirque du Soleil, but can you work a little harder for me?
Yeah.
Anything can happen. Anything can be spun a certain way, but
yep.
I've always loved doing a lot of things, even with the Blueprint thing I do, where there's 1,000 people in this community,
right,
of young comedians and people. I just love being of service, and I felt as a manager, and I still feel that way. Like, I love management. I love when you take somebody and they're here, and with your talent and their talent, you go there, and then they're experiencing things beyond their wildest dreams. Amazing.
Yep.
But I also don't like just the thought of helping one person. I want to be influential with as many artists as I can. That's why I do the podcast. There's no sponsors on this podcast. I just do it because I think that there's information that you have that's like extraordinarily impactful, and hopefully with Airbnb being my mind, there's other things as well. And so,
I was fortunate because especially when I got to APA, I could do many things. I started in the rock and roll department when I was IFA and all that, and then stayed in that when I got to APA, but also did all the variety television. So I booked all the game shows, all the talk shows.
You booked all the comedians and musicians.
Everybody. Musicians, authors, actors, didn't matter. Everybody.
Like the Hollywood Squares, you would book the people on that.
Exactly.
I was just at the Hollywood Squares. Do you mind if I talk about this?
Yeah, I want to hear, yeah.
This blows me away. So
my mother was the booker on the original Hollywood Squares after she stopped dancing.
Incredible.
Yeah.
So this is a show that's had 4 incarnations, maybe 5. I'm not even going to say the name of the comedian who I work with. But I start working with a comedian again after many, many years after working with them for 25 years and then taking a hiatus and then working with them again. And I sit down with them, as I do with anybody, and I say, hey, what's your bucket list now? Like, what's on your thing? What do you really want to do? Give me a list or whatever. Number 1 on the list, Hollywood Squares. It's an
iconic show.
I sat there. I was like, wait a second.
Yeah.
Like, that's the number 1 thing you want to do. Yeah. It's $10,000. It's just an easy gig. And I looked at them and I said, but game shows and hosting game shows, people in film and television, they don't embrace you after that. And this
not anymore. But in the day, absolutely true. Today, it doesn't matter.
Well, let's go toe-to-toe with that. So this person that I had the conversation with has always booked film and television, even though they've hosted shows and done whatever.
Yeah.
There's only a couple of people who booked a lot of things after hosting a game show or a thing. And as far as I'm concerned, you might have others, but
Well, hosting, you're right.
But- but it's like,
but still, it doesn't
but-
stop it.
but and it's not that but Bill Bellamy and Jay Moore have always booked film and television roles and hosted things. I don't know how they get away with it. Jamie Foxx hosted Shazam for 1 year, and I truly believe, besides the health scare,
Right.
I certainly don't think it helped him. When I represented Louis Anderson, he would share with me how he was offered $6 million for Family Feud.
Right.
And how they work like 7 shows a day. And that he literally worked 2 months a year and he couldn't turn it down. It was $6 million.
Yeah.
And he didn't get a film or television job for 12 years until Baskets, where he won an Emmy
Won the
Award.
Emmy for it, yeah.
And so I think it's a dangerous thing, but it's unbelievable. You go to Hollywood Squares and like it's just everybody's there, and you're like, what are you doing here? Why are you here?
They enjoy it. There's no stigma anymore.
Hey everybody, it's Barry Katz, and I wanted to talk to you about Blueprint for Success. This is a community that I put together during the pandemic to help all artists of every walk of life in the entertainment business, no matter where you are in that part of this journey. It's designed to help you. There are podcasts with people that will inspire you, like Kevin Hart, Judd Apatow, Bill Burr, that you can't find anywhere else but on this program that I've interviewed, to times where we get to talk to executives in the business that you would never have access to tell you what you need to hear and to answer your questions, to all sorts of different videos and master classes designed to help you get to the promised land. That's what the Blueprint for Success is. Doesn't matter whether you want to be a stand-up comedian, a sketch performer, a podcaster, an actor, an actress, director, writer, social media person, whatever you want to be. I've been doing this for 40 years. I've had the honor and been humbled to represent people like Chappelle, Wanda Sykes, Louis C.K., Dane Cook, and probably over 20 other people who went from a studio apartment to being a multi-millionaire and a household name. And I want that for you, and I wanted to take the time with this program to be able to help you on your way there, to get there and to heighten and increase the trajectory of your career. Blueprint for Success is the way to go. I'm proud to be a part of this program, and I'd be proud to have you to be a part of it too.
It used to be when I started in the agency world, there was the personal, there was rock and roll, there was the MOR, for lack of a better term, there was commercials, there was, in the talent division, there were television agents, and there were motion picture agents. Because in those days, if you worked motion picture, you didn't do television, especially if you got a name in business. Mm-hmm. And if you're in the television department, you made a ton of money, but turning someone over, damn near impossible. Not impossible, but damn near. As the years have gone on, TV and cable and all that. So now 90% of your film stars are from television.
I get that, but we're talking about...
You can count real movie stars on one hand today, maybe, that can really open a movie. And that almost doesn't happen anymore either.
I'll give you 1.5 hands. But I'm talking about just these shows, like whatever. Another person came up to me who shall remain nameless and said, Barry, can I ask you some thoughts on something? I said, sure. He said, listen, these gigs are... this is easy. This is good. I'm having fun.
Oh, yeah, they are. If you're good at it, they're really easy. Yep.
I'm getting offered hosting game shows. What do you think I should do? And I looked at them and I said, why do you always ask me questions that you know the answers to?
Yeah.
He says, I know, but it's so much money they're offering. And it's like,
Yeah.
whatever. I said, but you want to act. You've been an actor. You've been a great actor. You can always host a game show, but
Yeah.
you can't always be a great actor in film.
I think it
and
also
television.
depends on what point in their career they're at. If they were, for 10, 15 years, they were the leading man or the leading lady in films and television. And then all of a sudden you get to a certain age, where you can still get jobs acting, but you're no longer the lead. You are grandpa, you're the next door neighbor, which is still great jobs, don't get me wrong. But if someone comes along to you, like with Louis, and says, I'll give you $6 million to work 4 weeks a year, or 2 months a year, I should say, it is hard to say no. And if you do it right and you have the right representation, you can still act, not at the same pace you were before, but you can still get the jobs. And even with Louis, even though he didn't work for a lot of years, I mean, let's be honest, Louis I adored him. He was a genius comedian, and he was a very good actor. But even before he did that, he didn't have a plethora of film
That's
roles.
true.
He was mainly a stand-up, and a brilliant one. So when he got Baskets and had a chance to finally really, that was a great role, to spread his wings, and he ends up winning an Emmy, as he's richly deserved. But if you're really good and you do your career properly and you have the right perspective on yourself and your talent, you can do that. Now, if you go do some cheesy game show or something, you're right, that can screw the pooch. But in general, like I said, especially when SNL started, all of a sudden SNL television is creating the next movie stars. That never happened before. Never. Nobody ever looked at, even MASH, which is one of the great shows in history. Nobody in MASH came out a movie star. But you and I can think of a dozen people that came out of SNL that are legitimate movie stars.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think to myself, when you talked about being an agent and losing your job, I think of this time when I ran into Denis Leary, and I remember the story that his agent and him told me about their discussions about taking a $5 million movie, Tooth by Sea, with Sandra Bullock.
Yeah.
And his agent at the time was James Dixon, who now represents
James,
Jimmy Kimmel
yeah.
and a bunch of other great
Jon
people.
Stewart and all
Jon
those guys,
Stewart,
yeah.
Adam Carolla. And
I love Dixon.
And he said that, to Denis, look, money's money, but, the script isn't that great. Sandra's amazing, but I don't think this is the right move for you. And Denis, he took the money, he took the $5 million. The movie didn't do well. And then I heard from James that he had fired James. And I ran into Denis like the day after that. I don't know what was the reason. It was just a fluke. And I looked at him, I said, can I ask you a question? He said, sure. I said, well, you love James like he was your guy. He did everything with him. He told you not to do that movie.
Yeah.
And you took it anyway, and then you fired him. And Denis, he used to have this thing where he was just a chain smoker. I don't know if he still is. And I'll never forget, he looked at me and he was just like, Katz, I can't fire myself.
Just going to say that. I was taught that early on. Artists, when something goes wrong in their career, whatever it might be, whether it's personal or career decisions, whatever, it goes back to what I was saying later. When I get up in the morning, when you get up in the morning, we look in the mirror and go, we want to do great for everybody we work with. But if these two don't get jobs today, these three might. You've always got, if this one doesn't get the job, well, how about this one? How about this one? An artist gets up in the morning, looks himself in the mirror and goes, I can't fire me. It's not me. It can't be me. I'm talented. I've worked my ass off. It can't be me. It's got to be my girlfriend, my wife, my husband, my boyfriend, my manager, my agent, my lawyer. Someone's going to go. If a career starts to plateau or even go downhill, look at his group. Someone's going. and maybe 2 or 3, because they, like you said, they can't fire yourself.
1, 2,
3, 4, 5, 6.
6 degrees of separation.
6 degrees of separation. I'm going to mention some names.
Yeah.
Tell me what comes to mind.
Okay.
Could be a sentence, a little tiny story,
Sure.
an anecdote, anything. Adam Sandler.
One of the nicest people I've ever met in my life. Besides being ridiculously talented, he is just, he is everything you think he is. From the day I met him, watched him on stage, act wasn't that good, but you fell in love with him. And we met and became best friends. And he always is a classy person. I mean, everybody's read the stories. You do a film with him, whatever, people go crazy. They all want to work with him again. And he surrounds himself. He's got a great family. Mom, dad, all of the family is a great, solid
Bedford, New
family.
Hampshire.
Yep. Great family. And he's got a lovely family now. And the people he surrounds himself with are all people he grew up with in the business. You know, they all went to NYU together and all like that. He's gold.
Paul Rubins.
Paul was great. Met Paul, Doug Drazen. One of my
Doug
best friends.
Drazen was in the offices
Next
with me
door.
at Disney.
Yeah. Doug and I have been best
He
friends
did Fools
since.
Rush In, that
Yep.
movie, which I loved.
Yeah, based on his true story. But I joined the company and Doug had been there, and he'd just signed Paul. And he came to me and he goes, nobody gets him. He's this brilliant guy, he's in the groundlings. You'll get him. And I go, okay, great. So we went down, went crazy, met Paul, we hit it off. So Doug and I, worked with Paul all those years, and he was brilliantly talented. He was always good to me, always good to me. And a real creative genius kind of guy. I mean, he had his temperament and all like that, which a lot of artists do, but the way he thought about things and the way he did things was brilliant.
Stephen Wright.
My fave. I mean, I think people always say to me, of all the people we've worked with, who's your favorite? Who you think is great? I go, Stephen Wright is the most original artist I've ever met and definitely ever worked with. Brilliant. Absolutely. Nobody's like him. Nobody's like him. But he's also the sweetest person you'll ever want to meet. He's that guy. He's just one of my favorite people in the world.
One of the only comedians I could ever say, from the moment he did his first Tonight Show until now, he's still doing the same business. No higher, no lower.
Yeah, well, he had when we started with him, and he was like, he had a lot of years up here, but then you're right. He was steady for all those years. Yeah,
incredible.
Yeah, well, a couple reasons. I mean, he's that brilliant, but he was also very careful to never overplay. We wouldn't go into any market for at least 2 years. He was. Stephen was never a road dog anyway. But he did it right, and he diversified. He did some acting. He's written. I don't know if you've read it. He just wrote a novel about a year ago. It's amazing. It's an amazing thing called Harold. It's just nuts. It's pure. I mean, I know you're a fan. It's pure Stephen. It's amazing. Amazing.
I love him.
Yeah.
Tiffany Haddish.
Tiffany. I love Tiffany. She's one of those great spirits. There's so much talent in her, but again, when you get her off stage and you just hang out together, she's just a really sweet person, loyal. I mean, she has so much talent. She doesn't oftentimes know how to harness it, but she's just great, and she loves people, and she's and I've always loved Tiff. I'm gonna go see her in a few weeks.
Billy Gardell.
Love Billy. Billy was so great. First saw him in, I think it was Montreal. Signed him in and came back. And for years, he was always worked, always, good stand up. But he was really good actor. And he would go out and he got him in some things and series here, a movie here and this thing there. And he would do, he'd always work, but he was so funny because we used to, they probably still do it. I don't know if they do, but like after pilot season, a lot of the agencies would sit down and have a cut meeting.
Yes.
And Billy knew that. So every year he'd call me and Paul Santana, who was his talent agent. And he'd call us up and go, "Did I make the cut?" And we go, "Yeah, you're good. You're still in." And then he ended up getting,
Mike and
Molly. And yeah, I love Billy. He's a trip. Good guy.
A guy, one of the first comedy concerts I ever saw in my life at Boston University, Martin Mull.
Martin was a true Renaissance man. Brilliant artist. I mean, he's still hung in like 4 or 5 galleries around the world in their permanent collection. And he became known as an actual high-end American artist. He's that brilliant. But writing, his when we used to go on the road, and it was great. His writer would say, the buyer has to supply an overstuffed easy chair, a side table, a floor lamp, and then in parentheses it said, all furniture must be as tasteless as possible. and he was just, great guitar player. His songs were just amazing. And a really, really good actor. Really, really good actor. He was one of my faves. He was I'm sorry we lost him. He was so brilliant.
Jimmy Fallon.
Jimmy is so funny. I first saw Jimmy. Randy Siegel was managing him and said, "Come on and see this guy." And I went and saw him. And he was doing
the troll doll.
Exactly. He was doing the troll dolls. And it was kind of, I had the same sort of reaction to Jimmy that I had with Adam. You looked and you went, "Yeah, the troll dolls are cute. The material was okay." But you didn't care. You were like, "I love that guy. His energy, his performance, you loved everything about him." Harry Anderson was the same way. Harry would come out and he would, insult people and he'd do tricks, geek tricks and stuff like that. At the end of the show, I hear ladies in the back going, "I'd love my daughter to meet him. He's so cute." They didn't care.
Tell me one Johnny Carson story that no one knows.
Well, John, because I was very lucky to know he and my folks were very close, and Ricky, his middle son, I knew all 3 of the boys, but Ricky and I were the same age, and we were really good friends. We hung out together, and we were the 2 that were on the road with my mom and dad and Johnny in those days, and we'd run the backstage and run around and hang out. We had way too much fun. Johnny, one of my favorite stories was I was in boarding school my whole life, and in high school I'd come in on the weekends into Manhattan from Tarrytown, and a lot of my friends didn't have a place to go on the weekend, so I'd bring them home. We'd hang out in the city together. So I had a buddy of mine with me this one weekend, and that Saturday morning my dad says, "Just we're going to be out late tonight. Johnny and Joanna and your mom and I are going to go. We're going to the
Joanna, Johnny's wife, his third wife.
Third wife. Yeah. We're going to be at the plaza, whatever. They were going to see somebody at the plaza or wherever the hell it was. And we'll be home late." I said, "Okay, great, no problem." So we went to a movie. We're doing whatever. We get back home. We're in my room. And watching the 11 o'clock news, NBC. And my dad calls up and he goes, "Just so you know, we'll be home in about 20 minutes. Johnny and Joanna are going to come back. He wants me to make breakfast, so I'm going to make breakfast for everybody back at the house." I'm like, "Great." Johnny used to love to come back and have my dad cook. He loved my dad's cooking. So I go, "Great." I don't think anything of it because that happened, more than once. So we're in my room. The TV's on. Johnny's on the screen doing the monologue. And there's a knock at my door, and the door opens, and Johnny goes, "Hey, Danny, just want to say, hey, how you doing?" "Good." I said, "Oh, Johnny, this is my friend Barry." He goes, "Oh, great. We're going to have breakfast. Come see you out here." I said, "Great." Door closed. I look at my friend, and he was like, he just flipped out. Yeah. He was, Johnny, but one of the more fun things was Johnny used to close his show with a sketch about a morning kid show
His
host.
stand-up show.
Yeah, his stand-up show. Yeah, when he did stand-up on the road.
He played the kid.
He
and
played the guy who was the host of the kid show. It was actually an old friend of his. It was based on a true story.
I thought he played that character and the kid. He just
No.
did the host? Okay.
He just played the guy. And so what it used to be was, he told the story, a true story. He said him and this guy, I forget the name of the actor. It was a West Coast kid show. It was just California based, but LA based. I didn't know who he was because I was a kid in New York. We had Zachary. That was the guy in the morning. So, and he would say we were out drinking till like 2 a.m. And he said, we're just pounding him down. And this guy had to be up at 6 a.m. to be on set to greet a room full of 8 and 9-year-olds. So he says, I made myself get up the next morning because he said he'll never make it. He'll never get there. And he said, here's my impression of what happened the morning after the night before. And then he would come on stage, and they had on tape the sounds of kids talking and mulling around a studio. And my dad would come on stage with a headset, pretending to be the stage manager, and he'd talking to the director in the booth. He'd say, I don't know where he is, Bob. Get a cartoon queued up in case he doesn't make the opening. And he says, okay, kids, my dad would go, quiet down, kids. Now remember, when Uncle comes out and asks you those questions, answer really loud, okay? Okay, get ready. And then while he was doing that, Johnny would be backstage, and I would do the quick change with him. He'd take off his jacket. I'd put a hat on his head, a cigarette in his mouth, and then he would stumble out, like majorly hung up with a cigarette dangling in his mouth. And he'd go, wait, and then my dad would wave him in, and he'd say, you're on. And he'd say, good morning, everybody, whatever. How you dudes doing this morning? And they would turn it up to like 11. I mean, just, hey, and he would just, it was a great, it's how he closed all of his concerts, and people just loved it. He was amazing. But doing the quick change backstage was hilarious. That was so much fun. So much fun.
One last one.
Sure.
Steve Martin.
I saw Steve a lot. I got to see Steve a lot with, when Stevie Goodman was opening for him. Always the nicest guy in the world. I was really fortunate because Marty Klein, who was my friend and mentor and the president of the company for all those years.
And just as a side note, which I don't know if you know this or not, I'll never forget this. You talk about how agents are always trying to get clients away from other clients, and managers sometimes are trying to get clients away. And the only time I ever spoke to Marty was when he called me and told me he wanted to represent Dave Chappelle. And Dave was represented by Abrams Artist at the time.
Okay.
Ruth Ann Secunda and Joe
Ruth Ann,
Rice.
sure, yeah.
And I said, Marty, I'll never forget what I said. I said, Marty, I don't really know you, but how would you feel if another agent was calling one of your client's managers to have him take a meeting? And he said, I wouldn't feel very good about it, but we have a lot to offer, and the least I think you should do is come over here and take a meeting with me and see what we're about over here. You don't have to make any decisions. And and a couple of days later, I met with him for the first time. An amazing man. And then what felt like a week or two later, he passed away.
Oh, you're right before that. Yeah. No, Marty was a classy guy. Marty was a very classy guy. But but I was lucky to go with him. So all the times when Steve would do those great Tonight Show shots and stuff like that, I would go with Marty. So it'd be me and Marty and Jim McCauley, Bill McEwen,
Jim
and
McCauley
Steve.
was the booker of the Tonight Show.
Be us in the dressing room. And one of the things that I learned watching Steve, who's still one of the 5 greatest artists out there, I think, is people always talk about his Tonight Shows because he'd always do something funny and stuff. And people would say, oh, he's so funny off the cuff, and he's so, No, he planned he never went into a Tonight Show going, well, I'm a star now and Johnny's my friend, so I'm just going to go and promote the movie. He would go over lines and bits with McCauley and go, what do you think about that? And Marty would be there and I'd be there and Bill McEwen would be there. But he right up to walking on stage, he was always thinking of what things to do that would make Johnny laugh, would make the audience laugh, and be memorable. He's the consummate professional.
And you just said, for any artist listening, you know, the preparation,
Absolutely.
the repetition, and being memorable.
Yep.
I like to call it holy shit moments, creating holy shit moments, but being memorable, because if you're memorable, it doesn't matter if in your personal life you're going on a first date, you want to be memorable. You want to get the second date.
Yep.
And you want to, it's the same as an artist. You do an acting job, even if the movie doesn't do well. You know, can anybody forget Edward Norton in Primal Fear?
No.
You know,
amazing.
But the movie necessarily didn't do that well.
Wasn't a giant hit, yeah.
But you just remember these things and just be memorable, and everything will take care of itself. Another thing that I wanted to share with you and the audience is that, you know, a lot of artists are afraid to they're afraid to go in different directions. They're afraid to change up things. And one of the things that I respect so much about certain comedy artists, and it doesn't mean that if somebody doesn't do this, because you mentioned Adam Sandler. You know, Adam's brand is Adam. Just that affable, huggable, lovable, wonderful guy, whether he's producing an animated movie Transylvania, or whether he's doing Happy Gilmore 2, or whether he's doing stand-up. And there's nothing wrong with that. But what I love about Adam, which maybe, who knows, maybe the world doesn't love as much, and what I loved about Jim Carrey is, you know, punch drunk love, funny people, uncut gems, Jim Carrey, you know, The Spotless Mind, I forget the
Eternal Sunshine of the
or Truman Show.
Right.
These might not be the movies in their repertoire that are making the biggest box office, but they're not afraid to make a move like that. And
they're artists. They want to do something.
And Steve Martin, from what I remember, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong.
Pennies from Heaven,
amazing.
He was unbelievable. People were like, "What the hell?"
Yeah, but also in stand-up, this is a guy that was selling out arenas. This was a guy who. That's probably one of the proudest moments for me is when Dane Cook was able to be on the Billboard chart in the top 5 of the regular charts with comedy, which hadn't been done since 1974 with Steve Martin.
Let's get small, yeah.
I'll never forget when Steve Martin met with Dane Cook. There was a lunch set up, and Steve, before they said anything, he pulled out, you know, a CD of his, you know, musical group, and he slid it over the table to Dane. He says, "I want you to have that." And Dane, you know, is looking at it, whatever, and he puts it down. And Steve looks at him and says, "Did you listen to it yet?" And there's just, but the point I'm trying to make with Steve is that he's at the height. He's selling out Madison Square Garden. He's selling out NBA arenas as the wild and crazy guy and all these characters. And then one day, you know, I think it was a day when he did some kind of an industry showcase, not that he had to, and he got a standing ovation. This is the story I heard, could be wrong. And after there was a moment where he just, or a week or two, where he just decided, you know, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to be myself, and I'm going to go out and I'm going to do things as myself, and I'm going to make things work. And then after that, I'm going to do music, and I'm going to go out and do the stuff that I love.
Music was always a part of his life.
But I'm talking about this, you know, the band and And the point is that a lot of artists are afraid to do that different thing for what people might say about them or what they might think about them.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, believe me, I should be wearing clown shoes when I say this, but I always try to think of what I'm doing as I just want to, I don't want to worry about what anybody else thinks about what I'm doing. I want to be in a situation where I just can do what I love doing, and hopefully it'll have a positive impact on people. And a lot of comedy artists are afraid to change. You don't know what's going to happen. And you can even see certain artists and you see like stuff happening that's amazing. Like I look at, Bert Kreischer, who I worked with for a long time, and the persona of the shows without the shirt on and the regular guy and the everyday guy. And it's amazing what's happening, the groundswell and how it keeps growing and growing. But I would presume that when he's alone, he might say to himself, okay, when do I make this pivot to another lane that's going to be just as big, if not bigger than this? And then after that, when do I make that pivot? When you look at Carlin dressed up in the suit doing the Native American story, and then the hippy dippy weatherman, and then the political comedian, it's like these adjustments of how things can be.
Well, some artists can do that and some artists can't. I think most artists feel they can do a lot of things. Some of them will stick to what they're doing because they're so good at it and they're also so successful at it. And it is very hard, kind of like when being offered $5 million to host a game show. It's kind of hard to go, I've always liked acting, but it's not my thing, so they'll stay in that lane. But those that have the talent, which a large number of them do, will take that risk. And it also comes down to, obviously, it comes down to the artist, but it also comes down to who they surround themselves with, who give them the confidence and the freedom to say, if you fall on your face, you're still going to be fine. And not every artist, or every person for that matter, in their life will take those risks. The smart ones do. And but there's also those that know their lane, as it were, what makes them happy. You look at like Springsteen. Springsteen, years and years ago, people were throwing movies at him, and he would probably have been a wonderful actor. But he was like, no, this is what I do. This is what I do well, and this is what I love to do.
Which is something a lot of people don't realize, is that there's rock stars, a lot of them are great actors, they just don't do it. John Bon Jovi is a great actor. Mick Jagger is an extraordinary actor.
Yeah. But even somebody like Dwight Yoakam, has a great little career doing other
tremendous.
things.
Even a guy who people don't think of this way, but he can do it, is Rick Springfield.
Because Rick's very good.
They remember him from soap opera,
right.
But he's fantastic. He's amazing.
Absolutely.
And so, anyway, 3 more questions.
Sure.
Your proudest moment in show business.
Wow, there's so many of them. But when Stephen Wright got his Academy Award, felt really
the appointments
of
Dennis Jennings.
Yep. I meant a lot because I love Stephen, and we worked so hard, and that was a real proud moment. But I've been fortunate to have a number of those situations, though. But that one comes to mind like immediately.
This gives you some insight and the audience's insight into Stephen Wright. And not to give anything away, but I've been working on this documentary with these double Emmy award-winning documentarians and on the comedy business and everything behind. And there's like a through line of sort of my life and the business or whatever. And they put a list together and they said, do you think we can get these people? And I'm not going to mention one of the names, but one of the names I said, of course we're going to get that person. I've known that person for 40 years. I've had a great relationship with them. Every time I see them, I know that I have a good relationship with them because a couple of times I was walking through a casino or an airport and I heard my name and I was looking around and and they called me over, and we all know when we see somebody in an airport we don't like, we're just like, okay, rush into the store.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and then
Plane's leaving.
And then they asked me about Stephen Wright, and I said, well, I love him. He's a part of my life. My career. I haven't really spoken to him maybe once in 30 or 40 years. I just don't think he's. God, maybe there's a possibility he'll do but he doesn't do interviews. He doesn't do. And they call the person that I said it was a shoe-in, and it was like, hard pass. And they call Stephen Wright. He says, where do I go?
Where do I go?
I fly there? Do I get there? I could do anything.
That's hilarious.
And so just like, your biggest disappointment in show business and how you used it to fuel yourself to the next level.
Well, you learn from every situation. But when I've been with Harry Anderson from the beginning, and everything, and we were great friends as well as a client and all that. Night Court, huge success and all. And then it's like the 6th year of Night Court or something, whatever it was. He got wooed and went to CAA, and that killed me. And that was the moment where the first time I ever really, really realized, okay, you can get over that. You always have we all have a tendency to think, well, we're only as good as our client. And that's true to an extent, but if you do your career right and you treat people fairly, artists, managers, studio people, network people, whatever, bookers, and you're honest and forthright, and they can depend on you, and like that, it will come around again. There'll be another artist, there'll be other artists, there'll be other situations, because the only thing that you can control in your career is your reputation. And that's what you have to hang your hat on. And that's what people will remember, and got through that and came out the end better for it. And Harry and I always remained friends, and a few years later he came back, But that was the first time I ever got smashed in the mouth. You're like, oh, So, but you learn, and if that happens to you in your career and you can't get over it, go to another career.
Last question: what advice do you have for the young person, an only child, sort of seeing the business, seeing how great it can be, trying to figure out what your lane is in the business, and how you can have the kind of career that you have? And part B to that is, you've seen so many comedians. What advice do you have for the young comedian who's starting out, and how to get to a situation to the point where an agent like you at the height of your career would say, I am going to chase that person like their ass is on fire until I sign them? Well,
the first part, I always say to artists, I mean, anyone that wants to get in our business, whether it's management agency, acting, whatever, it's like, if your passion is really there and that's what you want, learn everything you can and get in. People always say, how do I get in the business? Get in. I don't care how it is. And if you're mailroom, if you're, working for a manager in the office, if you're working for a studio, cleaning up after the show, get in. Once you're in, make contacts, you see what goes on, and then you can figure it moves out from there. I always, people say to me, well, I maybe want to be in production, or maybe want to be in, maybe agency. What do you think? I always say, start with an agency. If you start in an agency, in the mailroom of an agency, doesn't matter which agency it is, you will learn. An agent is the center of our business, in the sense that 99.9% of deals are done for every artist in every area with an agent. So if you're in an agency, you'll see directors, writers, actors, comedians, rock stars, you name it. You're going to see the deals, and you're going to see them in your office. You're going to see people that work with them. And you'll see the personalities of the people in each department, because each department has distinct personalities. The comedy division is a little different than the rock and roll. We're in the same field, kind of, but there's a little difference. And then the acting guys are different from the literary guys, and the reality people are different than the below-the-line guys. So once you get in there, you can say, oh, I feel comfortable with this group. I think this is the way I want to go. Then you work your way up, and that's how you learn. And for artists, I always say the same thing. If it's in your gut and you're like, I've got to be a performer, then you know what? Learn your craft. Do everything you can for your craft and be true to what you want to see. Don't try if you're a musician and disco's in, don't try to be a disco musician if you're a jazz musician or if you're a rock musician. Do your music. And if you're good at it, it will find its audience in a week or in 10 years. You don't know. Same thing with a comedian. I remember years and years ago when all of a sudden dirty comedy sort of made its move when Schimmel and Dice first hit. And all of a sudden it was like, oh, being blue is, kind of cool. I had one, I won't say his name, but it was a really nice guy, and I'd known him for years. He calls me, Danny, you got to come see me. I'd seen him like 6 months earlier. He's got to come see me. It's a whole new act. I go, okay. I doubt that, but I go see him, and he's basically did the same act, but he just threw in a lot of curse words because that was the thing, And I said, don't do that. If you want to be dirty, if it works for the joke. When Lewis Black, who I love to death and worked with for years, Lewis Black is genius. And when he does blue, it's for a purpose. He doesn't say just to say it. It's to punctuate something. Lewis. And same thing. But if you're a clean comedian, be a clean comedian. Even if it's not the thing today, it will be. First of all, there's always a place for that. And secondly, it may come back into fashion in 2 years. But be true to yourself, and then seek out those to help you that you trust and like, your manager, your agent, your lawyer, whatever. But your one job as an artist is to be the best artist you can be, and then listen to those around you, people you trust.
Danny Robinson.
Always a pleasure to see you, Barry.
Amazing.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I actually believe it this time. I'm so grateful, and I'd like to thank Monique for setting this up.
I'm
very grateful, and
it is.
You're an amazing man.
Thank you. It's always been known for a million years, and always enjoy you. So yeah.
All right.
Cool.
All right.
Thank you all.